You're listening to episode 158. Kristen, a licensed marriage and family therapist, talks all things childhood anxiety with us. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. We are in March, which means we are smack dab in the middle of Child Life Month. There are always going to be good things going on for Child Life Month, whether you're a child life specialist or a parent. I want to make sure that we take care of you. First of all, I'm so proud to be a child life specialist. I don't know if other people in other industries feel as much pride as we do, but there's a lot of hard parts that go along with our job, but there are also really amazing parts. And one of my favorite parts is the community that we have built together in meeting parents, meeting other child life specialists, and other healthcare professionals like Kristen, who I get to chat with today, who all work towards the same goal of supporting kids and families because it is such an important role to play. And we get to go to bed every night being like, yeah, we did what we could to support others. On Jay Shetty's podcast today, he said, we want to make sure we love others, serve others, and feed others. And I love that. So a couple housekeeping things because it is Child Life Month. I want you to know that we are giving 20% off Child Life Circle memberships. The Child Life Circle is an online community for certified child life specialists. Come on and get affordable PDUs. You can get 2 PDUs per month for just a very short price underneath $20. So if you are a certified child life specialist who has been interested in joining the community, when you sign up, use code MARCH for 20% off. And parents, we have free resources for you too. So if you go to childlifeoncall.com/parents, you will see our grandparents guide. You will see our parent starter kit, which teaches you how to talk to your kids about taking medicine and getting shots and all the things that go along with healthcare experiences. So I'm so glad you're here today. I'm so glad to introduce you to Kristen. She helped me solve a parenting problem that I have been having that I didn't really even know I needed help with, but I definitely did. So I hope you enjoy our conversation today. So a couple housekeeping things because it is Child Life Month. I want you to know that we are giving 20% off Child Life Circle memberships. The Child Life Circle is an online community for certified child life specialists. Come on and get affordable PDUs. You can get 2 PDUs per month for just a very short price underneath $20. So if you are a certified child life specialist who has been interested in joining the community, when you sign up, use code MARCH for 20% off. And parents, we have free resources for you too. So if you go to childlifeoncall.com/parents, you will see our grandparents guide. You will see our parent starter kit, which teaches you how to talk to your kids about taking medicine and getting shots and all the things that go along with healthcare experiences.
For having me. So my name is Kristen McNeely. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in Southern California, and I also hold board certification in behavior analysis. So I've had both of those license and certification for about 15 years now. I started my career practicing in-home applied behavior analysis for children on the autism spectrum. I then kind of shifted to doing some school-based consultation and really enjoyed it, and ended up taking a full-time position as a behavior specialist for one of our local small school districts, and we are a full inclusion school district, meaning that there are no special day classrooms. So even our students with most significant needs are included in a general education classroom, which is awesome. And then a couple of years ago, I was just getting more and more questions from friends, really asking, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? And I thought, gosh, I could really, I could make a career out of giving advice like this. And so I decided to go ahead and start a private practice. And so I do that fairly part-time right now, but it's growing. And about a year ago, I started my Instagram account trying to disseminate really good evidence-based information on behavior strategies, and then kind of adding in some childhood anxiety, because I think what I'm seeing more and more now is that children are having behavior disorders that are really a manifestation of anxiety. And so understanding kind of the difference in those two things and how those two problems are treated, I think is really important. And so that's kind of where we're at today.
Well, you have so much experience. I think it's always such a unique part if you get to go into a person's home and really see how it's working. So the fact that you started that way in your career and then the whole school district being inclusive is another part I want to touch on, because inclusion means everybody. And I think we can be really quick to say we're inclusive with not being it. So I love that your school district is doing that. And
Yeah.
now with your private practice too, I think just the fact that someone like you who is evidence-based can be putting out information that is actually helpful and not harmful is
Yeah.
really important.
Yes. Agreed.
When you and I wrote to each other before we started recording the podcast, I could just tell from what you wrote that children with anxiety is your focus, and you spoke about that a little bit. What are some of the common themes you see and that you want parents to hear just around child anxiety in general? I know for myself as a parent, whenever my kiddos start to have anxiety or show signs of it, I'm like, what have I done
Yeah.
to cause this inside of them? And so if you could really just help me feel better right now, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that is my number one starting point. I think the most important thing for parents to understand is that their child's anxiety is not their fault. We are biologically wired to want to soothe our children, and our children are biologically wired to seek comfort from a caregiver. That's just how we are. And so understanding that their anxiety is not our fault is really step one. And then step two is really understanding that even though it's not our fault, the way that we respond to their anxiety really does impact how their anxiety either grows or how they learn to deal with it, how to manage it, I should say. Helping them understand that anxiety is a temporary feeling and that there really are good evidence-based strategies to help those feelings go away.
When do you think the time is to seek out a professional? So if I'm starting to notice anxiety in my child and I'm like noticing these behaviors, when is it like, okay, this is normal kid stuff, like everybody goes through this, to this may need some extra help or support? Where do I find and where is that line drawn?
Yeah, that's a great question. A one-time anxious episode is not typically something to be concerned about, even maybe a two-time anxious episode. Once it gets more significant, where it's really starting to impact either their quality of life or your quality of life, when it starts turning into them not wanting to leave their home or participate in activities that they normally enjoy, when it starts turning into really significant behavior disruptions like tantrum behavior or significant difficulty sleeping or changes in friendships, those are times when I would really start to seek out support. I also think there's never harm in seeking support earlier than later. You're only going to learn strategies that can help prevent something from turning into a bigger problem.
So say we do end up kind of thinking like, all right, this is a pattern. I'm seeing this happen a lot. Maybe not a lot of things have changed on their end, but like I notice myself getting really upset when they're anxious. And we go to seek out help, whether it's family or, just meeting with somebody who can meet with the child, but they have like a 6 month wait list. what,
Mhm.
what can I do in that time before we're able to get help?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because the evidence based treatment for both adult anxiety and child anxiety is cognitive behavior therapy. And step one in cognitive behavior therapy is what we call psychoeducation. And that is just a really fancy term for understanding what anxiety is, understanding what those feelings are. Like I said, understanding that they're temporary, understanding how they might feel in your body and what you might do as a result of them. And there is so much power in psychoeducation. I find that a lot of times psychoeducation is actually all people need to be able to start moving through their own anxiety or their kids' anxiety. There are a couple of books that I think do a really excellent job at providing parents with really good resources and really actionable information. So I can share those if you would like.
Yes, please tell us.
So my two favorite are one is called Freeing Your Child from Anxiety. It's by Tamar Chansky. And she does just a really nice job of laying out what anxiety is, how your kiddo can think about it, how you can talk about it. And then the second one is called Breaking Free of, I believe it's Breaking Free of Anxiety and OCD. It's by Ellie Leibowitz. He is out of the Yale Child Study Center, and he developed a treatment called SPACE. And this is a parent based treatment for childhood anxiety. So there's no child participation necessary. And it is all based on parent accommodation, the way that we accommodate our kids' anxiety. So, for example, if a child is afraid of going to a room by themselves, then we go with them. Or if they're afraid of social interactions, then we do the interactions for them. And those accommodations, we know from research, really actually exacerbate anxiety. And so SPACE is designed to really help parents understand that and develop ways of supporting their child rather than accommodating.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna throw you with a real life scenario right now.
Sure.
So my son is 7 and he does not like being upstairs in our home without somebody there.
Mhm.
And he'll either drag his little sister to come with him, and there's just I don't want to go with him. I'm like, if you need to go grab your socks, this is your responsibility. They're your feet go in your
Yep.
shoes and they're your socks in your drawer. And so I don't go with him, and then I find myself being like, gosh, I'm so lazy. All I have to do is just go up there with him, but you're saying that I might be doing an okay thing.
You're doing the absolute right thing. Yes, I have
Oh
one of
my
those as
gosh.
well who does not want to be upstairs by herself, does not want to go get those socks. And I question it myself sometimes too, like, gosh, it would just be faster if I would just run upstairs with her. But yes, you are absolutely doing the right thing because every time that you don't go with him, you are teaching him it's not actually dangerous to go get my socks. It's actually not dangerous to be up here by myself. Whereas if we do, the message that we're sending our kids is there's something to be afraid of. So good for you.
Oh,
You're doing great.
yeah. Oh man, I cannot believe that you just helped me so much with that because oh man, the game is on now. I'm not doing anything. We also have this a lot with like nighttime struggles. So parents that are
Yeah,
listening to this though and have kiddos who have gone through medical trauma, medical experiences, I know you can't speak to every situation, but I know that line gets a little bit
sure.
blurred when how much do we make them do on their own versus knowing they have kind of safety with their caregiver. And I know as a child life specialist in the hospital, my main job, one of my priorities for every single child is to make sure that they have a safe person in the room with them because they're in a threatening experience. When you come
Yeah.
home, though, getting the socks is not threatening. So I know those lines can
Right.
get really
Right.
blurry when you have a kiddo who has some special or medical needs. Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we can focus on too is that we can be very systematic in how we address this. So let's say that you have a child who has maybe undergone some trauma, or you have been reinforcing these anxious behaviors. There's no reason that you all of a sudden need to go cold turkey and no longer do any of those things. You can take a very step by step approach. So, for example, with your son and the socks, let's say instead of going all the way to his room with him, now you're just going to go to this top of the stairs and you're going to say, I'm going to stay right here while you go grab your socks from your room. And as time goes by, you stay, closer and closer to downstairs. I think that one of the things that I love about your job is that there's really this focus on treating children with dignity. I think that can get lost sometimes when we're talking about child therapy, and specifically things like applied behavior analysis. There's, kind of this bad rap for it in some of the fields, and I think it's understandable. So understanding that our kids are people too, while their feelings might not be, there might not be actual real threat, their feelings are still valid and we can treat them that way.
I feel like I use that in like relationships too with adults, right? Like my feelings are valid regardless of whether or not
Yes,
you think I should have them or not. And you're right,
yes,
we owe that
absolutely.
same to our kiddos too. Yeah, and so I
Yeah.
think that's really good too. It's the cold turkey thing as well rarely ever works, and this gradual approach
Right.
seems to be much better.
Yeah.
So I also wrote to you. I wanted just a personal story from you. I know you guys are kind of navigating your own health challenges at this
Yeah.
time, but is there anything funny, unexpected, or surprising from being a parent yourself, both in this field? I was just talking with another mom before this, and it's like, regardless of what your job is when you're a parent, it doesn't necessarily mean that you do everything right all the time. And I was like, I have definitely cursed at my kids at 2 a.m. Like, I cannot be trusted, or when it's 2 a.m. and I'm not
Yes.
well, and it's like, I know better, of course, but things just happen. So do you have any kind of interesting stories from your personal life that you could share?
Yeah, I have three little ones, and my middle tends to be my more anxious one. I tell people she runs anxious. But my oldest, I do have a funny story about my oldest. So he, during the pandemic, attended a private school, and for a variety of reasons, we chose to move him to our neighborhood school in first grade. And timing wise, he didn't end up being able to start until the second week of school. It was fine. He's a really outgoing, happy kid. And so I was on maternity leave with my youngest, and I had my middle home with me. And his second day of school, it was about an hour until school got out, and I was packing up the littles to go run an errand before we picked him up. And all of a sudden, I see my phone ringing, and it's the school. And as a mom, you just know that's never a good sign. So I pick up the
Mm.
phone, and it's the principal, and this happened to be her first year as principal. And she said to me, I'm calling to let you know that your son got sad at school and he decided to walk home. And I remember freezing, and I was like, okay.
What?
And she said, we had to go and get him, and we picked him up off of, such and such street. And it was a 45-mile an hour road. And I
Oh
realized
my
he had gotten like
gosh.
three-fourths of a mile away from school. And and I said to her, okay. And she said, I don't know if you want to come pick him up. And yes, I will be right there. And so I hung up and I called my husband, and he left work right away. And I went and got him in the office. And I remember afterwards being so proud of myself, because that could have gone so many different ways. And I remember just really being able to put on my professional hat. Once I gave him a big hug, and, I had calmed down in the car. And then as soon as I saw him sitting there, he started crying again and said, I'm so sorry. You just
Oh.
really scared me. And are you okay? And we chatted with her about, what can we do if we're feeling sad at school? And she was so great. And the next day we got to school and I had contacted the principal again. And I said, I would really like to introduce my son to all of the yard supervisors, all of the office staff, and make sure that he knows that if he's feeling sad at school, all he needs to do is go to the office and he will be able to call mom. And mom will come get him if that's what he needs. Because I knew he didn't run anxious. I didn't think this was going to be a thing. And so I thought, he needs to know that he's supported right now. And as panicked as I felt inside, I was so thankful to have so many colleagues in the field who, I'll never forget my boss, our director of special education. She said to me, Kristen, that is so independent of him with, all this enthusiasm. And I just thought she was crazy at the time, but it really helped shift my perspective to, okay, she's right. Like, this was very independent. He was going the right direction. He would have made it home. Like, in another 20 minutes, I would have gotten an alert on my phone that my child was on my front porch. And so, we treated it that way. And, it was a rough couple of weeks. There were a couple, he wasn't attempting to leave school, but he was having a hard transition. And then after that, everything was fine, like magically, completely fine. And it was such a reminder for me that not every really significant incident like that is an indication of a huge problem. Sometimes there are just these fluke things that happen. And when we respond with compassion and support, we can get right back on track. So.
Wow. That is a pretty incredible story. And yes, sometimes it takes that outside perspective of being like, how would I respond to another person's child who did this, and doing it to my own. And it makes me think a lot about, I have a lot of friends too in the same, just phase of life. And of course they come to me with like, my child hates getting shots. And so we talk a lot about like, when is it time to get help about your fear of shots, and when is it time to understand that this is a natural fear, and all the things that go with that. And sometimes, just like you said, the freak out with the shot is a one-time episode. And when you respond then for the next time with some tools and some safety nets and some practices for both you and your child, it gets a little less as scary the next time, and the time after that is even better. And so I that's kind of how I'm applying it to what families may experience when they bring their child in for shots. Of course, this is very different for kiddos who have a lot of chronic stuff and are constantly poked and prodded, but in general, this can sometimes be a one-off really scary episode, and doesn't mean they'll have a constant fear of needles for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as parents, we feel our own kids' emotions so deeply. And especially for parents who, like you said, have kiddos with chronic conditions where they're constantly, having testing done, that can be really hard. And I think it's important to check our own emotions and make sure that we're not putting our own fears onto our kids, because a lot of times kids are so resilient, they really will be okay with just a little bit of kind of that front loading and a little bit of extra support. Like you said, it gets easier and easier each time. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, I know that a lot of medical parents and healthcare professionals that are parents too, and working with kids, it can sometimes feel like you don't have a lot of time to make extra appointments and go seek help. But I think what you said about the beginning, like if you're noticing really changes in behavior, things at school being different, peer relationships being different, and altering your life and your child's life, it may be time to go seek help. But until then, there's people like you who can give us access to education. And where can people follow along with you to get some of those tips that you've been sharing?
So my Instagram account is childhood.empowered. And so I share, just tips and perspective on childhood anxiety and related behavior. And then I also have a website. It's www.kristenmcneely.com. And I have a blog on there as well as some other resources. And then there's also contact information on there if people want to reach out for more individualized support. I love this podcast. I love that you're doing this. I think it's so needed. And I'm just really thankful to have the opportunity to be on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you so much for joining us on the Child Life On Call podcast. The only reason this podcast keeps on going is because of you and listeners like you. So please join in on the conversation with us on Instagram, Facebook. I'm even on TikTok now, y'all, making a fool of myself. I haven't danced yet, but maybe it's coming. You can find us at Child Life On Call. We also have a website, and that has all of our information about the Child Life Circle, about the Child Life On Call app, and a blog with new information all the time. That's childlifeoncall.com. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening to these episodes and being a part of this community. We are so grateful and so honored to be able to provide this for you.